Hi everyone, Barbara Moore here, Catch Your Breath 60. I'm inviting everybody to come and leave their comments today. Any comments that you have are greatly appreciated, and I try to answer all comments that come on this live broadcast. So I wanted you to know that I am not, and this comment came up a little bit earlier in the week. Somebody got a hold of me and said, did you know that anybody can come on, that this isn't a private group? And I am quite aware that this is not a private group. Although you are watching this on my Facebook page, like most of the Facebook groups that you attend, this is not a private group. Anybody can join. And the idea of having this public so that anybody can join is that you can join if you have COPD. Anybody with chronic illness can join. And your caregivers can also join. Hi, Carol. Hi, Jackie. Without having to disclose anything else, they can look at the comments. They can read what's going on. And they can also contribute to anything that's going on here at COPD Catch Your Breath 60. So my question to you, I think today, is if this is a hindrance to us, and if you would prefer to have a private group. I know that most of you do belong to private groups on Facebook, and most of the groups that you belong to are private. But that does some hindering. Hi, Pamela. Thanks for joining us today. That does some hindering about who can join and who can gather information. The idea of this page is to give information to everybody that has COPD. So I'd really like your comments, and I'll ask you again before I leave today whether you would like to consider making this a private venue. And what the advantages of it would be. So tomorrow is November the 20th, and it is World COPD Day. So, big deal. It's a big deal because it hasn't been very long that we have actually had the care that we get today. And although we might not see it as optimal, it is much better care than we would have received 10 or 15 years ago. So, tomorrow is COPD Awareness Day, and it is the day that we use to make people aware of what it's like to have COPD. Thank you, Carol. Okay, Jackie, so it is open to everyone. And I'm sorry that, sometimes people want to keep their illness secret. They don't want people to know, and if that's the case and you see somebody that you don't want to know about it, then I guess you just can't comment that day or say too much, right? So, Tammy, I'm going to talk again at the end of it about this not being a private page. So, what do you want everybody to know? What is it that you would like others to know? Hi, Marilyn. Thank you for joining us today. What would you like everybody to know about COPD? The world is waiting to hear from us. This awareness of COPD is not very old. As I said, my mother passed away 25 years ago, and I know she had COPD now. But of course, they didn't recognize it as a disease back in those days, right? And they had nothing to offer her anyways. So what would you like people to know about COPD? What would you like them to realize about COPD? What are the signs and symptoms that made you realize that you had COPD? And did you get tested without having an exacerbation? Did anybody get tested before they had an exacerbation and before it got to the point where they were in ICU? A day in the life, Carol says, a day in the life of a person with COPD. You know, it's really funny because Carol, you said a couple of things to me, I think about this time last year. And it was about my anxiety that I feel in the winter. And because I recognize that, because you brought it up and I recognize that. Hi, Karen. I kind of have been working towards how am I going to get past this winter without anxiety. And damn, if the weather didn't turn so early in the season, right? And we got so much snow here last week, and the snow's still here. I thought it was going to be one of those where it would just go away and we wouldn't have to think about it yet, right? But apparently this time last year we had snow too. We certainly didn't the year before, I can tell you that. So a day in the life of somebody with COPD, what does that look like? The struggles morning to night of trying to catch your breath, of trying to keep up with what it has to be done, trying to get a few tasks done around the house, trying to, before you get up or before you even go to the bathroom, you're starting to think about what is this going to look like? Am I going to get there okay? What do I need to take with me? If I'm down at that end of the hall, what else needs to go down there? And so before I even get up to go to the washroom or to go to the other end of the house, I'm thinking about what the movements are going to be, what it's going to look like, how I'm going to manage, where I'm going to stop to catch my breath. And I think most of us have kind of learned to purse lip and pace. Pacing was the big thing that I did, Carol, after you talked to me about having such anxiety in the winter time. I was making it actually worse than it had to be. And so when you mentioned that to me, I thought, that might be something, right, that I'm going to have to consider, and that I am making it worse because I'm allowing anxiety to take over. And I did. So I feel much better this year. I'm not feeling the anxiety that I was feeling going into the winter. That being said, I haven't been out yet. And so tomorrow will be the first day that I go out. And Thursday will be the second day that I go out, and I'll be out most of the day on Thursday. So that's going to be pretty exhausting for me because I'm not usually one to go out in the middle of for very long, and not for two venues, one after another. So pacing all your movements is a perfect example of how we live with COPD. One of the things that I did for my tank, and I don't have it with me, but maybe I'll bring it on next week and show you, the tubing that comes from my nose and goes into my canister, my tank, we wrapped it in insulation. So that's hopefully going to keep that oxygen warmer when it's frigid cold out, because I think that one of the biggest problems that I have is that my lungs cannot handle the cold anymore. The other day I got up to let the cat out, and I just have a door like right here beside me, and I just got up 2 steps to let the cat out, but I sucked in the cold air, and it was really frigid cold. It was that cold that smelled cold, and I thought I was going to pass out. So I realized then that one of the parts of my anxiety in the winter and in the cold months is that when I have the oxygen tank, these little tubes here, it takes them 2 seconds to get frigid cold. And when this gets frigid cold, it goes into my lungs as cold oxygen. And so that's something that, I kind of tweaked on. Somebody had put that on as a post this week, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to really try that, and I think it's going to be a great thing for me. Now, the rest of it, I can put under my shirt so that I have very, very little exposed. And of course, I have a scarf around my nose and my ears, right? So I think that that's going to make it a lot easier. And I thank you, Carol, for bringing that up to me, because until you mentioned it, I didn't really realize it, right? That I was really suffering from anxiety. just because somebody says that, you're suffering from anxiety doesn't mean that it's not real. Anxiety is real. And there are reasons for it. And some of those things are like cold oxygen and stuff. So you have to come up with creative ways to keep that oxygen warmed, especially when you're going out. Jackie says, I think it out first. Maybe too much sometimes. Yes, sometimes we do put too much time and effort into thinking about how that trip to the bathroom is going to go, or how I'm going to get downstairs to get the laundry. Sometimes, you just have to do it, and you just have to do it at a slower pace than anybody else would. Getting down the stairs is really not too much of a problem until you get to the bottom of the stairs, and then you run out of breath. But coming up is something different. Thank you, Carol. I'm glad to hear at least I'm not freaking out like I was last year, because it's very uncomfortable, Carol says, I haven't heard it in your voice as much this fall. No, I haven't, because I decided that I was going to find ways, and so wrapping the insulation around my cannulas, I think, is really going to be the salvation for me, right? So I appreciate you saying that. And just because somebody does say it's anxiety, remember that anxiety is real. And we just have to work on ways of getting past that anxiety and finding out what will work for us, right? So I was talking this week, and everybody has seen my Catch Your Breath ribbons on Facebook and my blog and all of those places. So I've had them everywhere. And on Instagram and everything, right? So I was speaking with somebody the other day who said she was surprised. She said she was a preemie, and I said, oh, I was a preemie too. And she said, yes, I was surprised to hear that. I wonder how many of us there are. Well, one of the triggers to COPD, 30% of those that smoked will get COPD. Living in an industrial city, workplace pollution such as construction, or even some people might be surprised to hear that secretaries are ones that are, hi Amy, some people might be surprised to hear that secretaries are more prone to getting COPD from office dust and toner cartridges. So being a preemie, living in a polluted city or an industrial city, workplace pollution, having had blood clots in your lungs, and the natural aging process, right? Don't forget that most of us don't get diagnosed until we're well into probably our 50s. Unfortunately, some people, because genetics can also play a role in COPD, so unfortunately some people still get COPD and they're much, much younger, and but that is a genetic issue. It's not something that you could have changed, right? So all of those things affected me. I was born a preemie. I lived in an industrial city. I was exposed to some workplace pollution. I had blood clots in my lungs, and I naturally aging, right? So all of those things are factors. I also have a family predisposition. However, it might not be genetics, because it might be just that everybody in my family smoked. It is said that COPD is the third largest killer after cancer and heart disease. And it is the second largest cause of disability. And I think that you'll agree that most of us had to leave work early. Most of us had to retire early. I forget what the percentage of it is, but quite a few of us had to retire and leave work early, as I did. I had to leave work when I was 62, and I don't get a pension until I'm 65. So that's kind of a bummer, right? For those of us that don't qualify for pensions or whatever, for various reasons, right? It's not always because Yes, Mona Sanford, I see your message. Mona says, hi, Barbara. I've been trying to listen and send you comments. COPD is terrible. It flares up. Have to blow out the candles a lot. And that's the best thing that you can do for yourself, right? So the post that I'm putting up tonight says that most people think that COPD makes it so that you can't take a breath in, when in fact, it's that you can't get the last breath out. And that's what prevents you from getting the next breath in, because it sits in your lungs, it's stale, and until we smell the roses and blow out the candles, we're not going to be able to get that breath out. And that's why pursed-lip breathing is so very important. We need to blow out the candles and we need to exhale a little bit longer than we inhale in order to get that excessive last breath out. Then we will be able to get a breath in. And I think that's the common mistake that most of us go to the doctor for and say we can't get a breath in, when in fact what we mean is that we really can't get a breath out. So thank you, Mona, for commenting today. So we did get this message from you today, Mona. So yes, a lot of people have run into issues of workplace pollution, right? And something that we never thought of before, and something that employers are probably not being held accountable for. I know that when I decided that I couldn't work anymore, I didn't even get a card from the company, and I'd been there for 15 years. So it was very hurtful, you know. But it is what it is, and I'm not dwelling on it. It's just, you know, your employer is so worried about being sued, or so worried that you're going to go after them for something, right? That they don't want to acknowledge anything. And my employer was no different. So, so that being said, what is it you would like everybody to know for tomorrow? A day in the life. That would be so interesting. So what happened to me was, on my progression of deciding whether I was sick enough, you know, I came down with pneumonia, and it was about 3 years before I was diagnosed. And I went to the doctor, and you know, I was really, really sick. I had a fever, and I was fatigued, and I couldn't get out of bed, and everything. You know, my lungs were tight. I had tons of mucus, couldn't get it out. And when I think back now, that was the first glimpse of what my life would be like. And that was about 3 years before I was diagnosed. And I'm thinking, what if I had just quit then? What if I had just quit then? And if the proper tests had been ordered, if things had have gone the way that they would have gone today, how much different would my life have been? You know, maybe I would have been able to work till I was 65, and I wouldn't have gotten that sick until then, right? It would have made a world of difference to me and to my financial status, right? So, you know, I kind of think about that, and I think of all of the mistakes that I made. And the one thing that I really would like everybody to think about for World COPD Day, which is tomorrow, is letting people know that early detection is the key. The earlier we get diagnosed, and the earlier we get into a respiratory rehab program, and the earlier that we get into an exercise program and all of that, the better the quality of life we're going to have. And this, I can't tell you enough, you know, because I've thought about this so many times. I waited 10 years before, 8 to 10 years before I got diagnosed. And I think most of us were probably at stage 4 or at the end stage of COPD before we were diagnosed. Imagine back, just, you know, cast your mind back to 3 or 4 years before your diagnosis, and the signs that led up to COPD. And if we could let people know what those signs and symptoms were for COPD, perhaps our life would have been different. Perhaps we would have been able to work until retirement. Perhaps we would have been able to have more of an interactive relationship with our grandchildren, and do more, you know, around the house, and be a more productive person. So if there's one thing that I think I would like you to tell everybody tomorrow for COPD Day, World COPD Day, is that early detection is the key to recovery. We are going to live with COPD for an average of 25 years. And each year is going to get a little bit tougher. And so if we were diagnosed a little bit earlier, and our lifespan would be a little bit longer, and we would have a better quality of life. So please leave your comments about what you would like to tell tomorrow for World COPD Day. Once again, I am going to ask you, this is a disclaimer that the group is not private. It is not a private group. It is a public group that anybody can join and anybody can come here. And it is promoted as a venue for anybody with chronic illness, COPD, or any other chronic illness that you have. It is for caregivers and for anybody who wishes to know about COPD to come and join us. They can see your comments, they can see your name, and so anything that you say on here is actually public knowledge. Would we like it to be a private group? And if we would like it to be a private group, then there would have to be a different kind of a venue that we would have, because I can't stop this tea time. I have far too many followers. So would you like it to be a private group, and would you like to have a private group? A private group can be something like another Facebook group, which I think that there's tons of them out there, and I'm not enough of an expert to actually do that. We could have a private group where everybody paid a small fee every week or every month, and we went just private, like 4 or 5 people would be able to, maybe up to 12 people would be able to go in. If anybody would be interested in that, please let me know. I'm on sabbatical from my blog posts, and I'm actually going over them from last year and seeing what's there and having a look at some of the blog posts, and I can see that as I progress through the years that it gets a little bit different. Things are a little bit different. So feel free to have a look around my blog, which is at catchyourbreath60.com. But I am just taking a sabbatical from writing, so I won't be doing anything on there except maybe making it an information board for the near future. And probably around February, I'll start maybe going back and doing some writing and making it a little bit more interactive. But right now, I've just got too much on my plate. So Thanksgiving is next week for all the Americans. We in Canada have our Thanksgiving on the third Monday of October. So we have our Thanksgiving is long past. But the CFL is having their Grey Cup game on Sunday. And Hamilton Ticats are in it, so we're all rooting for Hamilton, eh? And that's when we put up our tree and decorate our house for Christmas. So that would be the last Sunday of November. So I'm sure that you guys are that anybody who's celebrating Thanksgiving next weekend is kind of getting their Christmas decorations out and getting started on the Christmas season. So that's fabulous. So I am active on YouTube at Catch Your Breath 60, Instagram at Catch Your Breath 60, and Facebook at Catch Your Breath 60. I'm also on Twitter at Catch Your Breath 60, although I have very little going on there right now because it's usually downloaded from my blog. I appreciate everybody who came to visit us this week, and all of you who will watch this in the replay. I appreciate your comments, and I try very, very hard to answer any comments that you have. Please do feel free to leave anything. Let me know what your opinions are. I'm waiting to respond to what changes we will make in this group in the new year. This is Barbara Moore for Catch Your Breath 60. Thank you for joining us today.